Jessica here, and welcome back to a Monday video. Well, not welcome back, but welcome to a Monday video. I'm hoping to make this a regular occurrence. Today I'm playing around with a new to me, the Ink Road Stamp Chin Up Buttercup, but first I'm going to make the background for the card. That way it has some time to dry. I'm using the DaVinci Watercolor sampler. I'm not affiliated with this company at all, but I just truly like how they package their sampler paints. It's almost an egg carton texture packaging, and each paint dot has its own well to sit in. This isn't a new one either. I've used this numerous times for cards and even on two larger pieces of art. Again, I just truly appreciate the little details. I have a piece of Tim Holtz watercolor paper, and I'm using the flat side to do a quick wash of gray. I'm not even worrying about taping it down before I wet it, just laying down a single wash of color. I'm going to set it aside to dry because I will be stamping on it. And to stamp on it, I'm using the VersaFine black ink to stamp my images. This ink is great for watercolors and I use it all the time. I'm using the Tim Holtz stamp platform to stamp the buttercup images. That way I get a clean and crisp image on the watercolor paper. I'm concentrating the flower images on the bottom half of this piece. This stamp set comes with two buttercup stamps, a larger and smaller. I'm going to group them together and also do some masking. For the masking, I have a piece of the Inka Dinka Do stamping mask paper, and I'm stamping each flower twice using Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. I'm using that ink instead of the VersaFine because even though VersaFine dries fairly quickly, the Intense Black ink is quicker, and I'm going to fussy cut the mask out. Wow, that was quick. I'm getting pretty good with those scissors, huh? Alright, let's go back to the card panel. I'm laying down a few of the masks and stamping the buttercups to fill in some of the areas. When you go to mask, any image that you stamp first will be in the front. Then lay down your mask and stamp where you want to fill in the background. You can create dimension on a single layer by doing this technique. I could have kept going with the flowers and completely covered the bottom half, but I wanted to utilize some of the other stamps in this set. There are some great hexagon shapes, and I thought, why not use those as leaves? I'm grouping the hexagons together in threes to make the leaves and using the VersaFine ink again. I was pretty brave right there stamping that with the ink smudge, but luckily it did not get everywhere and ruin this. I wanted to try to just hand stamp the hexagons without using the stamp platform, but it didn't go very well and wasn't an evenly pressed image. I will fix that later though. Sometimes I can hand stamp really well and sometimes it just doesn't work out. So I've laid down all of my buttercups and hexagons that I want. Now I'm going to stamp the sentiment. I love the style of this stamp and how big the words are. Because this is so large, I did stamp the sentiment at least 3 times and then let the ink dry thoroughly before proceeding with the coloring. I've sped this up a lot because honestly I was watching YouTube as I colored and it took a very long time. Besides, I'm not the best at watercoloring. There are some fantastic watercolor artists out there if you want to learn a technique, but what I'm doing is first laying down a very bright yellow with a Niji water brush. I'm not sure how to say that. I'm using the brighter yellow on the smaller flowers and then a darker yellow on the larger. When I was little, we had a lot of property for me to roam around on, and I remember there being a lot of buttercups. It was probably one of the first flowers that I learned the name to, and I remember picking them a lot. Did you know that buttercups flower around April or May, and the flower symbolizes neatness, humility, childishness, ingratitude, and unfaithful behavior, surprisingly. And the Latin name translates to mean little frog. I googled it. I've added some orange to the centers of the flowers and a bit of yellow ochre and quinacridone gold for shading on the petals where they overlap. For the leaves, I'm using the lighter green and then go in with the darker green. I'm keeping the coloring pretty basic and just using the paints right out of the palette. I wanted to add more color, so I'm going in with a bright blue that coordinates well with the yellows and oranges of the buttercups. I did let this dry a bit so that the blue doesn't mix with the yellow, and I'm just being careful to not reactivate the paint inside the flowers or leaves. To blend it out a bit, I take a little bit of the gray and do a quick wash right above the flowers. I let the piece dry overnight, hence the wardrobe change. My whole idea for adding in the leaves was to also draw stems connecting the leaves and flowers. I could have used green and watercolored them, but I was inspired by the bold black lines of the sentiment, so I'm hand drawing the stems with an 0.5 micron pen. I do apologize for the coffee and the frame. I didn't notice it when I zoomed out. It will go away soon though. For the inside of the card, I'm stamping a sentiment from the Paper Smooches Uplifter stamp set. Unfortunately, I think this one is being discontinued since it is getting harder to find, but it does have some great sentiments in it. I thought this one worked well with the Ink Road stamp set that I used on the front. I'm using Intense black ink and then a blue and yellow ink from Gina K Designs to stamp the solid hexagons. See, this time my hand stamping wasn't so bad. Off camera, I used a MFT wonky rectangle die to cut down the chin-up buttercup panel. That makes the watercolor panel 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. That way I can layer it onto an A2 size card base, which is 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. I'm using Nina Solar white cardstock in 110 pounds. I have a bunch of these card bases pre-cut and scored so that I can easily grab them. When my stock starts to get low, I just cut and score to replenish it, which is great to do when you're watching a show or just burnt out creatively, which does happen to the best of us. I also added a bit of line detail with a white Prismacolor pencil to the leaves. I get an idea and start going with it before I remember to turn on the camera. You may have heard me say that I don't really like using sequins on cards except in shaker cards, which is totally true, but sometimes you need a little shine, and I thought the flowers would look nice with a sequins in the middle. I bought a pack of Doodlebug sequins, which I have linked on my blog, that comes with all different kinds of colors. This one has a mix of gold, yellow, and oranges, which works perfectly. I also have a link for a referral coupon to the Ink Road stamps that I will link with details below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give me a big thumbs up. My blog is listed below where I list pictures, links to the supplies used, and subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate you and have a great day. I will see you in the next one. Bye! Meh, meh.